everyone knows that our today's topic is GMFCS level 4 and 5 management, the physiotherapy perspective. Being me as a pediatric physiotherapist, uh, seeing these kids of GMFCS level 4 and 5 and working towards them is not that easy. Like, we have to plan appropriate goals, we have to understand their development, we have to understand the environmental factors, the family, the motivation, and everything. So we have to be little alert and more understanding everything, basically the holistic approach, and this is very important when we see GMFCS level 4 and 5 kids. So we have to be little different while planning their goals, treatment strategies, and not considering them as cognitively or you can say socially, emotionally weak. Okay. So just to mention the brief about the GMFCS level. So as everyone knows, I hope everyone knows about the GMFCS level here. So the GMFCS, or the gross motor function classification system, it's a 5-level classification that differentiates children with cerebral palsy based on the child's current gross motor abilities, limitations in gross motor function, and need for assistive technology and wheeled mobilities. So in general, like we know, as we know, GMFCS level 4 and 5, the present, you can say, the function and the participation is divided age appropriately. Just to go in general, it is divided from 2 years to 18 years of age, like 0 to 2, and then further 4 dividing this thing. Divisions are there. So to go just in brief, what GMFCS level tells us that in general is level 4, the kids are have their self mobility but with limitations. They might use some powered mobilities or the standards or the walkers. So more of adaptive equipments are used, but the mobility is there. And the level 5 is the transported in the manual wheelchair. So basically they can, like nowadays they use powered wheelchair as well, but the basically the self mobility and the participation is little limited with GMFCS 5. So that's a little severe level of cerebral palsy. So before we go on to like how to manage and how to plan the goals, I just want you all to go through one video I will share with you. This video is basically put by the Can Child organization. So everyone knows about the ICF framework, that is the International Classification of Function and the Structure, Body Structure. But along with this, we need to know something that is 5F for these kids. I'll just stop share this presentation and go to the video. Is video visible to everyone?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So I hope everyone saw this video, and actually this video is very important to see by, I feel, us as a therapist as well, and our parents also. Like, this will really help them all, them to understand their child, and we also to understand their child as a team together. So just before heading to the actual management and what strategies to be put, how to take a care, I just thought of sharing this video with you all. So we were at this. So moving on to the further. So considering me as a PTist, the role of us is to improve their quality of life, to motivate them towards the movement, towards the mobility, towards their understanding likes and dislikes, more connecting to the environment and the society, and not basically feeling demotivated with respect to their body functions and the participation. The positive attitude and positive environment from start itself is very important. When the child comes to you initially, and making the family understand about the child, and giving them the roadmap of the child, this like how the child is going to grow, how much what you can say, the assistance of the surroundings will be needed for that child. The holistic approach is very important. Understanding the functional abilities and the participation of the child, and helping to keep that child more, we can say, the capable, and throughout the his growing stage, participating in the environment. So understanding that is very important. The SMART goal, the SMART goal, I hope everyone knows about the SMART goal. Still, I will mention about it in brief. And the knowledge of the roadmap of GMFCS level 4 and 5 CP. So basically, I would definitely share few of the articles what I found while like going through the, or when we plan rehabilitation for these kids. So there is one Gillette care system, the health care system. So they have actually put the roadmap of GMFCS level 4 and 5. So that is for parents as well, for us also it is good to know, so we are aware the which age group and this GMFCS level child, when we have to show to the basically the other team members of our healthcare, and what other things are important, not just the mobility, but apart from that, the nutrition, the health, the respiratory care, the mental health, and everything. So moving on to the plan of care. So when cerebral palsy or the GMFCS level 4 or 5, the child comes to us. So basically, obviously, we have to assess the child. So assessment on the basis of observation and skills is very important, because that will help us to have better outcomes, better results, better treatment strategies, planning, and everything. Understanding their participation, understanding their environment, where they come from, and how we can help them to be in that state or be in that environment, and being more participating. So the basic needs of survival, as for this kids, we know that the breathing, nutrition, participation, and good health, these are very important 4 things. So these things are we have to keep in our mind when we are forming goals for them throughout, so that we are maintaining their breathing, their respiratory care, their nutrition and participation appropriately with the growing age. The home environment and the functional participation with positioning. So it's not just what we have to take care, but we have to basically counsel and guide parents with respect to the child, how the child is going to be at home, to keep the child more participating. So the environment is very important, the position of the child at home, basically understanding how is the setup at home, what things they have at home which can be modified, or what adjuncts we can give the child to be more better with respect to the participation and the posture and everything, basically structure and the function of body, considering the ICF. The quality of movement and everyday activities following intensive goal-directed activity-focused physiotherapy is very important. Visual rehabilitation. So basically, apart from the posture and everything, we have to consider the sensory systems as well. Like we know many kids have cortico-visual impairment issues or visual processing issues. So visual rehabilitation plays very important role, because that is going to motivate them to understand the world better. So that is one of the motivating factor for them. So visual rehabilitation, other sensory systems like auditory and everything. So the respiratory care, as I mentioned before, virtual training is the recent advances. I'll share the article with you of the virtual training as well. So in the basically teenagers on the adult kids, the virtual training helps to improve their body awareness, their balances. So that is one of the adjunct we can use in the therapy. Mental health is important, therapy adjuncts, the hip surveillance and bone health. So these are plan of care, like we should consider these things. So as I mentioned, assessment depends. It has both the things, observation and the basically subjective and objective. So observational based assessment we generally do on the basis of the neurodevelopmental therapy approach. And apart from that, the assessment with respect to the scales, the standardized scales which are used. This I have mentioned. Sorry, someone is saying something. Hello.
No, I don't think so.
It was just
Please be
disturb.
on mute. Apart from the speaker, everyone else, please be on mute.
Yeah. So these are based on the researches, and many researches I have mentioned in the references down. So researches which are used to improve the quality of life for these kids with respect to the orthopedic, the mobility, and using other adjuncts. So few outcome measures they have used while doing this researches. So these are standardized scales to measure mobility, such as FMS, Functional Mobility Scale, Gillette Functional Assessment Questionnaire, that is more of a based on again functional participation. Then GMFM and GMPM, that is gross motor functional measure and gross motor performance measure. Then Barry Albright dystonia scale, because we know the kids have involuntary movements along with their body structure. The Quest is hand function assessment scales. Then modified Ashworth scale. Then Drooling impact scale. So coming up to like going after the observation, now the child has come to us, we have done the observation subjectively, objectively. So after following the assessment, we have to plan goals for them. So going through the assessment in detail is very important. Asking the parents, questioning the parents about the likes and dislikes of the child. What does the child participate right now in? How is the child connected to people around? Who are the motivators for the child at home? So how can we actually modify the things? And knowing the entire thing where the child come from is very important. So to set goals. So knowing child's limitations. So now I know the child, or we know that the child is able to do this thing or attempting to do these things. But then again, if we know that assessing, when you assess the child, you come to know how these are few limitations are there, or these are few restrictions the child may feel or may develop with the age for performing those tasks. So we don't want to limit those things. So maintaining that participation and understanding those limitations which can come throughout the participation is very important for forming the goals. So that's why assessment and reassessment is very important. Knowing child's dislikes and likes, parents' acceptance and expectations. So we should know what are their expectations to achieve for their child. But then again, the acceptance of the condition while forming the goals and helping, like they have to be a part of a team. So making them aware about what the child is going to achieve in near future is very important. The realistic and attainable goal is very important. That's from the SMART goal. Home and school environment the child is in, that we should consider, and for like you can make goals with respect to the home environment, with respect to the school environment, and improving their participation. Mode of transfers used indoor and outdoor. So are they using any transfers or adjuncts indoor and outdoor, and if not, then what are the reasons and how we can help them, how we can modify those positioning at home and environment is important. And the use of gas. Gas is a goal, basically goal attainment score. So these are the scores. I have put the image here, which mentions about, it's like a scale, a 5 score goal system. So using this, we can actually keep or formulate our goal, and we know how much to achieve and how the child is performing. So it's like my +2, +1, 0, -1, -2. So what we expect from the child and what to be achieved, and using this scale, you can actually understand where the child is standing and where you can helping the child to stand for. Then, as I mentioned, the SMART goal. So we have to be specific with respect to the condition of the child. knowing what the diagnosis of the child, and then what you can say, what are the contextual factors around the child. Measurable, it has to be measurable, because it's very important, because the child might need more time, the child might need more adjuncts around it, or you can say maybe at times a feedback around the child, or some motivation, or maybe some adaptive equipment. So the measurable thing is very important. The achievable goal, so as we know the condition of the child or the diagnosis of the child is this, so the goal has to be achievable. We have to keep proper, realistic and achievable, they both go in hand, so it has to be like that. And then timely, so with this time frame we are going to achieve this, so that is very important, and so that we work on those things appropriately. Just to share few, like as I mentioned about the goal setting and the how to plan goal for the child, we can see this video of a child, and this is basically a 1 year old child with GMFCS level 5, a dystonic cerebral palsy kid with the infantile spasm history. So right now, maybe I want just within 3 to 4 minutes, I want you all to put just a brief goal for this child, and looking at the video, and you know how the child is right now. So if you want to make the child more better with respect to his abilities right now, what type of goal you can form for this child. I'll just play the video, everyone please see, and then so I have everyone saw the video. So I want you all to take 2 3 minutes and put in a chat box what goal or what we can say more participating goal you can make for this child here, who is already sitting nicely on the surface. But do you all want that child to do much better than what he is doing right now, or what he is in the position right now? So everyone can put just one small goal for the child.
Hello, everyone. We can just keep it like participation based,
Hmm.
sitting being a function. If you all can think
Yeah,
of the participation, that would be really good for us to talk about
yeah.
treatment strategies further.
Because if you see the child is already sitting there, so something we can make the child do along with sitting will be better. So that is a participating goal.
You all can think of all kinds of play that you can do with a child with GMFCS 4 and 5. What
Yeah,
kind of a play?
considering, yeah.
Yeah.
With the other hand, he can reach out for the toy by Dr. Ambika. That is a function little bit. Play with the mother smiling and pushing a tower of block to fall. Yes. The small table in front of. Yes, that is good. We can incorporate a small table in front along with the toys.
Play with the mom smiling also is okay.
Yeah, that's
Pushing a tower of blocks to fall. That also is good because often they love to throw things.
so. Along with this, just to add on, like he's a 1 year old child, so goal with respect to the feeding can be kept. A goal with respect to the just looking at the book in front, or the book is shown by the mother and child is basically trying to touch the book and feel it, or maybe a sensory book or something, or just pointing out at the things. Just so that is again a function where the hand or the basically the child is into the activity and participating, so that can be there. Or just trying to put a hand on the face and put a powder on the face, or grooming sort of. So grooming, the nutrition and the feeding, then a play, so other things, and even the cognitions. Looking at a book gives a, it's more of a cognitive this thing, looking at a book and giving a response to the pictures. Yes.
Peekaboo
Okay.
also can be there, na? A lot of
Yeah.
non-verbal like communication, gestures.
Okay. Yeah. So can we go back? Thank you everyone. So just to see, uh, so this was the small child. I know because small child, the goal setting is still easy. For the bigger child, it's little difficult. So we'll obviously we'll talk about it also in detail in front. So then moving on to the treatment strategies. So after the goal setting, so just to add few things in this, I will add along with when I will talk about the treatment strategies. So you can correlate what exactly things we could have added while making a goal or putting a goal for this child. So going on to the treatment strategies, first of all, we know that the mobility and the posture and the function of the child is going to be little limited, not completely independent, or with a little support. They might need some adjuncts, some adaptive equipments for their posture. So the before going directly onto the handling, giving them alignment is very important, or using a proper uh, adaptive equipments during their day out, like for the sitting, for the feeding, then for the standing, during their indoor and outdoor transfers, during their sleeping position is very important. So when we plan a treatment plan, we have to add these things at the home and in the clinic. Okay. So understanding what the child would need. Just for example, to add, now we saw the video of this child. So everyone mentioned about the participation and function, that was very good. But as we see here, the way the child is, as I mentioned, he is a dystonic child, and the way the child is sitting down, there is a little bit, you can say the flexion at the knees here. Then the hand is little stiff. The hand is not that completely open. Or you can see basically in between the child is breathing, like the child has stridor as well, and little breathing heavily. So there might few compensations the child is doing here. So can we do a little correction in the sitting position of the child itself to make his participation more better? So there what the adaptive equipment come. So here if we give a child a good sitting, maybe wedge support for sitting, or a good bolster for sitting, or a good chair where his feet will be supported down, and he has something to keep his hand on, as someone mentioned about the front table in front and playing with that. So that is also a good thing. But again, a directly front table, instead he's sitting on some higher surface and the front table will be there. So again, there is a constant, you can say, the child doesn't have to put a lot of efforts for sitting, because we know their nutrition, their health, their bone structure are going to be little compromised. So we have to give some external assistance, not a support I'm talking, because they are going to participate well with those external assistance. So those things can be done. So this is very important. So first of all, we should know about the positioning thing. So knowing the right positioning thing for the child, the appropriate. Now this was a 1 year old child. So maybe I have added this thing. I'll just mention about the Sunny Hill clinical tool for hip health. So it's hip health as well as it's a positioning. So in those pictures, you will come to know what positioning for the sleeping, for the sitting, for the standing, and for the outdoor transfers we can be given with respect to the age and the GMFCS level 4 and 5. So this is what I was talking about. So this is by Sunny Hill clinical tool for hip health. So in detail, they have mentioned about the positioning from 0 to 2 years. So how the child should be in supine. I can share this thing with everyone. It's on Google also, you can just download it. You can just write down the name of it. So in detail, they have mentioned about exactly what support is going to be there for the child. Okay, so too much of support also will make the child dependent, and instead of dependent, will limit the child. The limit the mobility of the child. We want the mobility. We don't want constrictions to the child, though it is a 4 and 5. So understanding those things and giving that what you can say, the boundary and the support to the child is very important. So if you see here in the supine, in sitting, standing, walking, so initial age, what things can be given for the child for 4 and 5? This is for 4 and 5. Then from the age 2 to 6 years. I'm not going and talking about this in detail right now because it's mentioned with the protocol in this. Then age 6 to skeletal maturity. So knowing this thing is very important. So moving on to this one research I came across is the evidence-based standard dosing, that is by Pelek 2013. It was in 2013. In the references I mentioned about this research as well. So they had done this research in the neuromuscular disorder kids, cerebral palsy kids, and other basically metabolic bone disorders or a metabolic genetic conditions where the child has. So ideally, we know the GMFCS level classification is used for cerebral palsy. Just sticking on to this, I'll just mention about CP here. So they have mentioned about this 5 days a week, like standing or stander. There are different types of stander. There are prone stander, there are supine stander. So use of the stander, and we need some protocol. So how much the child should be standing at home, because we use stander, but then the appropriate protocol is not followed, and that might again would not help you to reach to the goal which you have planned for the child, or maintain the bone health and the mobility of the child, the joint integrity. So following this protocol of bone mineral, 5 days a week. So they mentioned about bone mineral density 60 to 90. So they have just mentioned about considering these things and this protocol to be given for the child. If the child has subluxation or dislocation at the hip, so this standing position, range of motion, and this spasticity, the child has spasticity. So this amount of this much of standing should be done for the child. I'm just talking this on the basis of research what they have done. But apart from that, the standing obviously would need some correction for the joint itself. We know the child joints are already in some position. The child has already achieved those, you can say, complete adduction, complete internal rotation of the hands, or the joint is completely unstable. So we have to give some dynamic stability to the joint and then make the child stand in that standard. So because the child is going to stand there for long, so we cannot just make the child stand inside that and again in the wrong position. The standing, just making the child stand is not important. Along with that, and understanding while standing how the child alignment is, that is very important. Coming after this, so positioning is done. So now it's a neurodevelopmental therapy. So just few things when we are doing NDT and physiotherapy. So first few things we should consider when you are handling the child of GMFCS level 4 and 5. I'm not going to go in detail about the strategies and the therapy because we are going to talk more with respect to the handling, not handling, but with respect to the planning, the protocol. So neurodevelopmental therapy, so few things to be considered when you do NDT therapy is try to use more of a higher surfaces appropriate for that child. Avoid direct flow sitting, flow sessions. Use of some texture or the foam mats is always good under their feet, under their hands. And generally we tend to take floor sessions, but obviously the child has so much low truncal tone, so much you can say poor posture, and when we take on the direct floor, the gravity is basically not helping them to work against it. So we need to give them higher surface so they can perform more better, and their participation, basically that is going to improve everything, their emotional state, their motivation, their likes, so everything. So that using of higher surfaces is very important. The early introduction of adaptive equipments and the adjuncts during therapy is an age appropriate to the child. So generally we tend to miss out these things. Using adaptive equipments very early in the early age is very important, because that will make the child what we can say functionally independent with that adaptive equipment. The parents to accept that fact that yeah, the child is going to use this adaptive equipments. It's not that the child is going to be independent. So making them aware about this is important. The trunk work, the base activation using boundaries around the child. So that is with respect to the therapy. So your handling matters a lot. Use of little heavy, contoured and textured based objects to improve their hand functions. Because we know these kids have involuntary movements, can be dystonia, can be dyskinesia, can be hyperkinesia. So giving them good surfaces to hold on to feel onto is very important during the sessions at the home as well. Proximal stability is very important at the hips, at the shoulders, at the trunk. Even the base of the thumb is very important. That's like a proximal stability for them. Because we know GMFCS 5-year kids are after, in particular age, they are going to be wheelchair bound. So their hand functions are very important. Involving caregiver in the session for handling of the child along with you. So they understand how to deal with the child. If the child has dystonia, involuntary movements, so avoiding certain stimuli, very excitatory stimuli or too much of, you can say, inputs. So they understand how to talk to the child, what to be, what has the tone has to be while talking to the child, or what type of stimuli has to be given. So involving them and with your handling is very important. So they also know how to handle the child. So just a few photos of our kids I have put here. If you can see how the modification at home has been done using the pillows and a bolster is made with a thick chadar here and the child is sitting on that. This is a wet surface where the child is sitting. These are, I was talking about the dynamic splinting. So these are super rats on the hand, if you see. So the expressions, it's immediate change in the overall effect of the child. Then again, oromotor therapy and the feeding is important. So nutrition component. So it's not that the child cannot sit and obviously sitting is very important for the child to swallow. And we know the sitting in them is very difficult. They have reflux issues, they have dystonia, they have extension thirst. So it becomes very difficult to feed them. Generally, again, then they are fed in the supine position. So that has to be avoided from the early age itself. So wedge can be used here as you see. The child is there in front or child is sitting on the wedge with a corner of the room or with some adaptive equipments like a corner chair. The child can be fed while prone on wedge as well. Here it's not a feeding what has been done, but then in this prone position on the wedge, the child can be fed because the head control will be good there. In the early age, start from handling to help with their feeding and the swallowing. So if you see the handling here, so how the thumb index, so this we have to teach the parents, like how to handle the child while feeding, so help them with the better swallowing. The
The,
nutrition, hello?
I'm so sorry to
Yeah.
just interrupt. They have this habit of like pushing the feed with the tongue out. So with this kind of the handling, what we can do is we stabilize the jaw in here, and then we depress the tongue down, and thus we give the feed. Yeah, this is all, Tejal ma'am.
Yes.
Yeah, you can
Yeah.
continue.
And even the object, if you see with the spoon when the caregiver is feeding, they are applying firm pressure on the tongue. So again, a deep pressure, a firm pressure or a firm touch or a firm input is going to basically avoid those involuntary movements interrupting into the participation of the child. So that's the important thing which we should aware about. Then moving on to the ribcage mobility and chest care, I would hand over to Dr. Sukanya.
So the way we spoke about all the treatment strategies, the trunk forms a big role in this, and the handling of the trunk. So when we move on to the trunk and the base activation for a child, we first look at the rib cage. Okay, so rib cage mobility, when we speak about posterior rib cage as well as lateral rib cage, is quite important in this, as most of our chest problems start with that, with the secretions lasting more into your lower lobes, like posteriorly plus laterally. Okay, so when we talk about rib cage mobility, when you handle a child, if it's a small child, okay, you can give rib cage mobility laterally. While sitting, you can give it in prone, especially with cases of the chest infection, the pneumonias, all this. Okay, now when we go on to the prone position, you can also do something called as rib walking. Okay, rib walking is specially used in cases of rib hump, and which you see with patients with scoliosis. Okay, then anterior rib cage can be used, but it is quite rarely used, as the secretions are not much found anteriorly. Okay, and the most important thing when we go on to the treatment plans is your feeding. Okay, so often the parents come with a concern of the child having these hiccups while he feeds. The child moves the food out, the child having GI issues, like colic issues, gas issues, all these problems. Okay, so when you go on to this, we first go on to the diaphragm assessment. Okay, so since our diaphragm has a main connection with the phrenic nerve, often the phrenic nerve gets quite irritated and the child like presents himself with these kind of GI issues. Okay, so when we go on to the diaphragm, the positioning is often of like semi-reclined. Okay, and then you move on to the lower rib cage in here and you do a work upon the diaphragmatic release. Okay, so here we are done with rib cage mobility and chest care. Also, when you come on to the breathing part of it, you can use a lot of breathing assistive these devices also, and you can use a lot of blowing in blowing out kind of exercises, like spirometer can be used in them. Also, when it comes to your feeding and as well as your oromotor part, you can use gum massage here inside outside, and we have seen this with various kind of these articles that the shape of the mouth plus the like quality of the child to feed and chew food thus change with that. Okay, yeah, next. So we move on further. We move on further to the hip surveillance and care, which forms the most important part of your gross motor function. So when we talk about hip surveillance, what do you mean by hip surveillance? Okay, so hip surveillance is a major aspect wherein you uh, it is the survey where you just clinically examination of the hip, and you take hip x-rays to know the quality of the hip subluxation of hip or your hip dislocation if it is there. Okay, so how do you see if the hip is into the place right away or it is just subluxated or like dislocated? So we move on to the migration percentage. Migration percentage gives us the ratio of how much the femoral head is just out of the acetabulum. Okay, so depending upon the migration percentage being 30 degrees or more, we classify the hip as being subluxated or dislocated. Okay, so now if the migration percentage is almost 90% or 100%, then we classify the hip as being dislocated. Okay, so as we can see, there's hip classification to this. So these are the grades 1 to 5 based upon which we decide upon the surgery for the hip. Okay, one disadvantage of calculating the migration like percentage is that it's quite subjective. Moreover, if there's any kind of the acetabular like dysplasia, it cannot be seen with migration percentage. Okay, so migration percentage gives us a basic ratio or a basic idea of the femoral head being out of its place. Okay, yeah, so can we move on to the next? So when do you, I mean, how frequently you go in for a hip x-ray, how frequently you send a child to an orthopedic surgeon is are the common like questions which are raised often. So based upon the scale of your GMFCS 4 or 5, we come to the hip surveillance schedule. Okay, so if the child is of GMFCS 4 level, okay, so you take an hip x-ray at a year or 2 years, or else you can take it prior to that also if you see that there's some limb length discrepancy, if you see that there's any shortening of the limb, there's pelvic obliquity at that time, and you have to just compare the hip with the migration the percentage of the child, and you have to take hip x-rays every 6 months ideally. Now if the child progresses from level 4 to 5, then you go on taking it 6 monthly, and if you see that the child is just stagnant or not progressing with his due condition, then you can take it yearly also. Okay, migration percentage gives you the stability of the hip established. Okay, and then we move on to the GMFCS level 5. So in the same way as we did with the level 4, we do it with the level 5. You take a hip x-ray at 1 or 2 years, or when you feel that there is a need of a hip x-ray. And when also on the clinical things, you can palpate the greater tuberosity of the hip, and you can make out that if the hip development is normal or you find problems with that. Second measurement clinically, that you see that the hip abduction is not more than 30 degrees, that range has gone down. There's scissoring that you can see, which is like quite progressing. And then you can see that there is shortening, the same which I spoke earlier. And as with the GMFCS level being 5, also you go on taking the hip x-ray 6 monthly. Okay. Yeah. Can we move on to the next? So we are done with the hip surveillance schedule here. And so these were the main 2 treatment strategies which I had to talk in details. One is your chest care, rib cage, hip surveillance. Then with respect with respect to the child, we can use this virtual reality games also. Okay, so that will help to improve the posture of a child, the balance of a child. Okay, so the main thing we have to keep in our like mind when like Tejal ma'am spoke about the goals also, was the connect with the child. Okay, so though we think that the cognition sometimes goes down with GMFCS 4 and 5, it is not like that. They do understand more, and they do feel what we project to them. So we have to be quite cautious. Our connect has to be quite playful, quite jolly. And if the child is non-verbal, or if the child comes to you with no speech, you have to totally like focus upon your gestures and a lot of non-verbal communication. So this is one thing that we can use, virtual reality games. Then comes the use of adjuncts. Okay, so right from the postural alignment that we spoke about earlier, pro-wraps, super wraps can be used. Super wraps could be seen in the picture earlier, that you can use in hands, because if the child goes into a lot of internal rotation at the shoulders, the fisting becomes more. And the minimal things like, feeding which the child can do, they can often feed upon small snacks like biscuits, all these things. If we try to prevent that fisting of the hand with this with the super apps and pro wraps, that's quite useful. Dynamic splinting, splints are often used to maintain the wrist extension. You can use a lot of orthosis also while walking. So the orthosis would be quite useful when you talk about the body weight support like treadmill. Matrix can be used to maintain the length of the particular muscle. As we all know, the shortening of typically of these common muscles, lat dorsi, rectus abdominis, by just using them a lot more. Then you can also use it upon your back. If there's a lot of pain, it also helps with your pain relief. A child can come with a lot of back pain if there's a progressive scoliosis that you can see with a child. Pre-surgery, post-surgery, you can do. Also with hip pain, you can use this. Hydrotherapy is one thing, because water, if used as a medium of therapy, works on your strength 3 times more than what normally our general strengthening like protocol works. So that's one thing you can use. So this is the use of adjuncts. Moreover, when we talk about the this therapy adjuncts like bolster, ball, wedge, all these can be used when I spoke about rib cage mobility. Because when you place a kid, maybe a smaller kid, or a kid who's past his 15 years, all of us have this caution of the base activation. So if you put a child on the floor, the base goes haywire and we can't handle the child. So use of adjuncts makes it quite easier for us also to handle the child, and we get more work with a ball, with a like wedge also, and like bolster also. That, so those adjuncts we can think of. Yeah. So this was all about the therapy part and the adjuncts part. We won't go more into handling because rib cage, scoliosis, or your hip surveillance itself forms the separate topics for our whole webinars. Thank you. Any doubts?
Just to
Anyone?
add one more thing in last, like initially, we tend to just give orthosis to the child. But when the child is from 0 to 2 years, and if you can, obviously they are going to need orthosis. But initially, when you give them a good modified shoes with a good insert in the shoes and what you can say, the little heavy shoes, the sports shoes, so that will help the child to get the awareness little better, the feet contour little better. So from start itself, you a little bit give such basically you can say adjuncts or inputs to the child will be good instead of putting into the orthosis initially. That's done. Any questions or Dr. Komal?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Any questions, anybody?
Can we end here?
Just fill the feedback form. It's in the chat.
Uh, I had one question. Yes, yes. Ma'am,
Yes.
ma'am, in GMFCS 4 and 5, so when the child comes initially, like in his development, which occurs from his birth, so there is always parents always ask the question, ki how, like, will he be able to sit, or maybe how will be the prognosis? So at that time, so what should be the initial expectation should be kept with the parents at that level, or should we tell them that it would be with the overtime which we can guide you better? So that is my question.
So what I would answer for this is with the experience, initial approach like for from the parents itself to make them understand to get the direction from the other healthcare is very important, like a neurophysician, or you can say if the child is having a convulsion history or seizure history, then neurophysician along with the epilepsy specialist. So that is needed for the roadmap. I'm going to share one document I said about the roadmap by the Gillette Healthcare. So in that also they are mentioned in detail about at this age, and when you see your child or when a parent see their child like this, so what exactly the other things are needed for the parent to be aware about whom to go for. And if they come to us first time, we have to direct them towards the neuro assessment, the neurophysician or the neurologist. It's very important because then that is going to give them a at least a direction, because everyone wants a diagnosis. So the direction towards what the child is going to be diagnosed with. And then it's not that on the basis of diagnosis you're going to achieve these things only. You might achieve better things, but as you know the child has this type of cerebral palsy, we should be able to limit, or we should have that limit to form the goals for that child and not make them be more unrealistic and more expecting from the child.
Okay, ma'am.
Can we end?
Yes, ma'am. If no one has any doubts, so we can.
Yeah.
Guys, if all are okay, we can end. Yeah. Thank you so much, Tejal ma'am. Thank you so much, Sukanya ma'am, for their inputs. It was a lovely session.
Thank you everyone
Keep
for being there.
guiding us like this.
Thank you, ma'am.
Welcome. Bye. Good day.
Good day.
Bye bye.